Welcome to Wisconsin in Focus. I'm Bruce Walker, Great Lakes Regional Editor for the Center Square. Joining me today is the Center Square's Wisconsin correspondent, Benjamin Yount. Ben, let's talk a little bit about a story about Wisconsin lawmakers are going to return their focus to public school reading struggles. And we both know that having kids in lockdown during the pandemic has significantly negatively impacted their ability to read at grade level.
Yeah, this is a problem that Wisconsin has been seeing for years. And reading is the basis. If you can't read well, then it doesn't matter if you take geometry. You're not going to do well in that either. It doesn't matter if you take world history. You're not going to do well in that either. If you can't read English, how can you be expected to conjugate verbs in German? Reading is the key. And there are an awful lot of kids in Wisconsin, who cannot read or write, or let's be honest, do math or science or social studies at grade level. The National Report Card came out, I want to say November, and we wrote a bunch of stories about it then. In fact, if you go to the Center Square, you can find a breakdown of every single state, how Wisconsin students did on the National Report Card, how students in New Mexico did on the National Report Card, and the tests show that 2/3 of kids in Wisconsin public schools cannot read or write at grade level. That doesn't mean they can't read. It means they're not where they're supposed to be. And just an aside, remember when we talk about grade level, that's about a C. It's not an A. It doesn't mean that you are college or career ready. It doesn't mean that you're at the top of the class. To say grade level means you're at about a C, which means 2/3 of kids in Wisconsin are maybe a C, more likely a D or an F in reading. And that is a huge concern. It has been a problem for years. You've seen test scores at best stagnant, if not dropping steadily for years. But you're exactly right. The coronavirus made all of this worse. Whatever the problems were with education in Wisconsin or almost every other state, whatever those problems were in 2019, they only got worse starting in 2020 when schools went home for at least a semester, if not a year, or in some cases in Wisconsin, a year and a half, almost 2 years. Think about it like this. Fourth grade is the key year. If you are behind when you're reading in the fourth grade, you will be behind when you are reading in the eighth grade, and you will be behind when you are reading as a senior in high school, and chances are you will never catch up. The kids who are in fourth grade right now, spring of 2023, they were in kindergarten in 2020 when their schools closed. And so millions of kids, thousands of kids here in Wisconsin, millions of kids across the country missed those early years, kindergarten, first grade, where the focus is so much on reading. And so in addition to the traditional test scores of 2/3 of kids can't read or write at grade level, you now have this huge bubble of young students who are about to be tested for the very first time who missed out on those key early years of reading. And again, if you're behind in the fourth grade, you're behind pretty much forever. And so Wisconsin lawmakers, in fact, the hearing is going on as we speak. Both the Assembly and Senate Education Committees have called in experts from the state's Department of Public Instruction, experts from the University of Wisconsin, experts in curricula. And as John Jagler told us, the focus here is how do we fix this? How do we make sure kids can read? Because if they can't read well early, they're never going to read well for their entire lives.
That's just very sad. I grew up in a family of readers, and I'm one of 8 children, and my parents read, my siblings read, we read to each other, and it was glorious. I mean, the day after we received First Communion, we would go through another rite of passage by going to the library and getting a library card. So, I mean, we took our reading seriously in the Walker household. So those who are having difficulty reading and not getting the help that they need, or just having that passion instilled in them, I just have a tremendous amount of sympathy for.
And I mean, think about what it is that we do. We write for a living, and you know, to be a good writer, and not to go all J school with you, but to be a good writer, you need to be a good reader. And you're exactly right. And look, it doesn't have to be you want to go and read the textbook. This was one of the great things about Harry Potter. My kids were really young when Harry Potter became a thing here in the United States. The first books became a thing, and once you turn kids on to reading, it does stick with them. And it does help you with every other aspect, because you got to learn to scoot before you crawl before you walk, babble before you speak before you read. It all gets connected together. And the difficulty here is because everybody is on the same page. Even the folks at the Department of Public Instruction will stand up before lawmakers and say, guys, this is a crisis. We got to figure this out. Something's got to be done. Everybody agrees. There's not a single person in the legislature. There's not a single person who has a kid in school who says, reading's overrated. Come on. You can just go online and watch it on YouTube. Nobody says that. The problem is the fix is difficult. All fixes in education are difficult because moms and dads have to buy in. It's not just simply a matter of money. Go and ask education advocates everywhere, and they will tell you, look, spending has steadily gone up on schools across the country, yet test scores remain flat. And this is going to be the difficulty. Without watching the hearing, I can probably predict that DPI is going to say, well, we need more money. Last spring, during the last legislative session, Republicans got together and worked with some of their Democratic colleagues, and they came up with legislation that would start screening kids as early as kindergarten. And there would be more and more tests as you built up to fourth grade. And the idea was, let's flag kids who are having trouble reading. And if they're not reading well by the fourth grade, let's either get them lots more help, or maybe let's keep them in the fourth grade until they can get to grade level. That, of course, then upset an awful lot of people in education, DPI included, teachers unions included, because one, that either creates a problem of, okay, well, now you've got a bunch more fourth graders, or B, it is implying that teachers aren't doing their job. And that's where this goes from sort of a public education crisis to a political fight. And that's what sidelined that last reading legislation. I asked Jagler, Senator John Jagler, if they were going to have legislation this year. And he said that they're going to. This was the way he put it in the quote. Testing is one of the key options to discover how bad of a problem we have right now, but we have to understand how kids are being taught in the first place and how well testing can uncover deficiencies in our schools. Unfortunately, depending on how kids are taught, they can appear to test well and appear that they can only read to learn too late when they're learning the wrong lessons and falling behind, he said. This hearing is the first step in a lot of hard work to discover the problem and how we can address it. So, is there going to be legislation at the end of this process, or are we going to get another series of hearings? Are we going to get another series of meetings and an expert blue ribbon panel? Or are we going to do something so that kids in Wisconsin can read? We don't know. It's way too early to say. And as with every single thing, the disclaimer at the top of every Wisconsin in Focus, because you have a Republican legislature and a Democratic governor, it is very likely that nothing could happen on this issue.
Listeners can keep up with the story and more at thecentersquare.com. For Benjamin Yount, this is Bruce Walker, Great Lakes Regional Editor for The Center Square. Please subscribe, and thanks for listening.
Freedom and liberty are important to all of us. If you're looking for civil, intellectual conversations with those shaping the future of freedom, try the Future of Freedom podcast with me, Scott Bertram. We speak with leaders across the country in the greater conservative and libertarian movements. In-depth conversations about where the next intellectual battles will happen across the country. It's the Future of Freedom podcast. Find it at americastalking.com or wherever you get your podcasts.